Welcome to episode number 5 of the Better Than Bitter Divorce podcast. Today we have Molly Faye. I am so excited to have Molly on our podcast today. She is actually the mother of Callie Donovan, who was our first person that we had onto our podcast. Molly is actually an award-winning journalist, and she co-hosts the Morning Blend on TMJ4 in Milwaukee's NBC affiliate. Molly earned a degree in broadcasting journalism from the University of Missouri, and she worked as an investigative reporter and a news anchor prior to her current role at WTMJ. But for many years, Molly has supported both local and national charities. She's dedicated so much time to mental health awareness and improving the lives of those that are affected. She lost her brother to suicide in 1998, and this was really a calling. Molly has tried to be a voice for families and loved ones who are struggling with very real and common mental health disorders. Molly knows that it's imperative that we talk to our people about these types of experiences and end the stigma and show up for one another, and that no one feels alone and hopeless. She is the mom to 3 adult children and has been divorced since 2011. What attracted me to Molly is that she has had such an amicable divorce. And if you listen to Callie's interview, oh my gosh, the praise by which she gives her mother and her father in terms of how they handled their divorce, well, it is what everybody should strive for. She got remarried to her husband Ross in 2020, and she does love to spend time with her dog Zeke. I'm assuming now that she has no kids at home, she now makes sure that her dog Zeke gets just the same level of care as she cared for her children. She practices hot yoga and goes for early morning walks. Welcome, Molly.
Wow, that's such a nice introduction. I am so excited to talk to you, Tanya. Callie has said so many incredible things about you, and I just love what you're about in coaching people to have amicable, successful divorces. So it's my pleasure to join you.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate the time that you're giving. I know you're super busy. And I just, because Callie was on already, and I'm hoping that all of our listeners really did get a chance to listen to Callie's interview because I wanted to showcase the effects on adult children of amicable divorce resolutions. And the reason why that was important to me is because sometimes when we go through a divorce, we're very caught up in ourselves, and how we are feeling. And sometimes being able to put that as a secondary and being able to focus on doing what we believe is going to be right for our kids, not just for now. It's not about just custody. It's not about just parenting time, but how can we set them up for future success in their lives, in their relationships? Because the idea of having a contentious litigation battle, the idea that children could be brought in as weapons into the divorce process, to me just makes my skin crawl. So I am so happy that you're here to tell us about what it actually took to get Callie to have the perspective by which she does in terms of what an amicable divorce means to her. So that is really where I want to start with you. How did from the day that you and your now ex decided to get divorced, explain to me kind of before you even talked to the children about it, what happened in that window of time?
Well, listen, here's the thing is that none of this is easy. And I think that's one of the most important things that I can say. Generally, there's enough hurt, enough anger, enough disappointment, enough guilt to go around between the couple, between both you and your ex-spouse. So I would never like for anybody to think that it's easy. But I think to me it's just like anything else in life where it comes down to it being a choice. You cannot have an amicable good situation if both people are not committed to it and choosing that. If one or both of you is not choosing that, it won't work. One person, no matter how hard they try, is not going to be enough to overcome the negativity, the hate, those kinds of things. I consider myself extremely lucky that the person I married, my ex-husband, that Keith was somebody who was committed to making it work for the kids.
So you say that it really does come down to again, both people being on the same page. But what would you say if one person was fully committed, but one person you could influence? Meaning that what would you say if you didn't have that partner that was 100% committed to the kids? What would you say to them to try to get them to understand that we have a choice here? And how do you convince that individual to get on the same page?
Yeah, thankfully, Keith, my ex-husband, didn't need any convincing, but I think your question is so good and so valuable because I'm aware of situations where that's not the case. And some people can be persuaded, obviously, and some people cannot. One of the things that Keith has always said that he thinks is funny is, I love my kids more than I hate Molly. And the thing is, it's like, okay, that sounds terrible. But his meaning, the intention behind that was, who are you going to put first? And honestly, it comes down to, are you going to put your children who you say you love and adore first? Or are you going to be so committed to the hate or the anger or the resentment that you have that you put that first, and it's going to blind you to the unbelievable positive outcomes that happen when parents just get along. It doesn't mean that you're over maybe what happened, or that you want to stay married to that person, or that any of those things. It just means that you both make a decision to commit to putting the kids first. And you can still have arguments.
Yeah.
My bias would be have them outside of their purview, so where they're not hearing it and part of it, or pulled into the middle of it. It means not oversharing with your kids details, because there are going to be two sides to every story. No one person in the relationship generally is responsible for the breakdown of the relationship. So I think to persuade somebody who's maybe not on board with making it amicable is difficult. But I think if you can convince that person that your kids are going to be the benefactors of being being an adult and being kind and being thoughtful toward that person, because you married them, you had children with them. If you're married and you get a divorce and there are no children involved, to me it's like it can be very clean. It's not messy. But when there are kids involved, it does get more complicated. But it's not their fault that you and their other parent, it couldn't get along or couldn't sustain the relationship for whatever the reasons are. And so I think if you just, because kids, there's so much research about the benefits for kids when the two parents get along. They have healthier relationships. They have better, stronger self-esteem. They have more confidence. They're probably able to share more kindness with the people that they interact with too.
I totally agree. And one of the things that I think is really important that we teach at Better Than Bitter, or say I teach at Better Than Bitter, is that it's really important that people process their emotional divorce before they step into that legal divorce. Because that legal divorce is really just the hardest business negotiation or contract negotiation you probably will ever experience, especially if you have children. But if you're so caught up in the emotion, what you had talked about, the resentment, the anger, the disappointment, if you're still in the trenches with those deep emotions and you step into your legal negotiation, that bleeds into that legal negotiation. You believe that you can like create revenge by negotiating or taking back or pulling or restricting and not compromising. And, that really hinders a more amicable resolution. So, can you talk to me a little bit about that emotional healing that you had to do from the time you, like, said, okay, it's time for divorce, until the time you guys actually got the lawyers and started, getting the asset division and defining exactly what the final child custody parenting plan was going to be? Like, what was that window of time, and what did you do to get your mindset in the right place?
So this is a tough question because I think it'd be wonderful to think that you would resolve the emotional baggage or emotional issues surrounding divorce before you got to the point of hiring attorneys and maybe child specialists and all those other things, and before the legal proceedings. I don't think that often happens. I also think it often takes many years for people to truly process the emotions that go with a divorce. For me, one of the more overriding emotions was guilt, because I felt bad for my kids to be raised in what people will call a broken home or a split family. And certainly the idea of sharing two households and having them go between when they're younger is really hard for parents to accept, and they feel, I think, very badly about that. Um, to be honest, one of the things that has helped me the most when you talk about putting aside some of those negative emotions like resentment and anger and all of that is a story that our pastor, a sermon our pastor gave in church, and it was the story of the two wolves, and there was a black wolf and a white wolf, and it was a wonderful message that I won't sum up very well, but the bottom line is, which wolf survives? So the black wolf is evil and the white wolf is good. And is it the wolf that's stronger, physically stronger? Is it the wolf who's more clever, who's able to, outwit his, you know, uh, would be attackers? Is it the wolf who is the best looking? Is it, which wolf is the one that survives? And the bottom line was, it's the wolf you feed. So if you are feeding your black wolf, if you are feeding negativity and you're feeding anger and you're trying to convince your kids that your ex-spouse is not a good person, that black wolf is going to win. That's going to be the wolf that survives. And are you feeding that? Well, some people will get up in the morning and they'll feed that black wolf breakfast, then they'll feed it lunch, and they'll make a really healthy gourmet dinner, and then they'll give the black wolf a big snack before they go to bed. And the opposite of that is feeding your good wolf. And this is true in life, not just divorce. But are you feeding good things? I'll often say to my kids, your dad is so talented. He's the best photographer, producer I've ever known. Or they'll say, I need to do this project. I don't know what to do. And I'll say, you should ask your dad, because he is great at these types of projects. He's the best storyteller I've ever known. He's a real handyman. He has wonderful qualities. And just because we're divorced doesn't mean that he no longer possesses those wonderful qualities. So it again it gets back to that choice thing. And if the wolf that you are feeding and you are feeding it positive things, then your kids, I mean, you talk to Callie, those positive things happen because her dad and hopefully her mom have been feeding the white wolf rather than letting the black wolf take over and ruin their lives.
Oh my gosh, this brings back just such like a moment for me, because I saw that you do long walks in the woods with your dogs. Me too. I also do hot yoga. Um,
I
but
love it.
uh, but I was really, really empowered in that process to find myself my theme song that I was going to march to during that beginning stages of my divorce process. And I would throw on my AirPods, and I found this song by Jason Mraz, and it was called Look for the Good in Everyone. And I would put that on every morning, and I would take a 45-minute walk in the trail. And that would be the only song that I would listen to on repeat, because every single day I wanted to feed that white wolf. I wanted to look at all the amazing things that my soon to be ex husband had, and all the amazing qualities. What a great dad he was, how smart he was, how grateful I was for. even though I always worked, he managed our finances really well. He put me in a really good position. Like, he's great with my family. I just, every day, I wanted to remember all of the good. Now, our marriage obviously wasn't perfect, and there were good qualities and bad, and at the end of the day, you make decisions as a couple as to, like, are we looking at life through the same lens? Is it what we want in our future the same? Can we be can our love languages match? I think that a lot of that relationship and how they endure over time connects back to a lot of those things. And sometimes you just say, like, okay, well, these are all the amazing things, and these are all the things that maybe aren't the right things for me moving forward. But if every day I focus on the white wolf and I feed myself those ideas, like, I'm going to be better off moving into my divorce process, the legal part, because it is hard. And I tell people that amicable divorces don't mean that everything's all like butterflies and daisies. Like, it's not. Or should I say rainbows and
And
butterflies
unicorns.
and unicorns. It's not. Like, it is. The actual legal process is very, very hard. It's like running a marathon, and you get to a certain point and you're like, oh my God, I just bonked. I hit a wall. Like, I don't think I'm going to be able to move through it. But yet you do. As long as you're feeding the white wolf and recognizing the good things that can come on the other side, and that you're doing the best you can for your children, that you can release some of that guilt, because I told my daughter and our son, this is just going to be a family reimagined. And, at the point my daughter was like, what, mom? Like, oh my God, la, 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 like, whatever, you life coach.
Yes. Yes.
But if you ask her now, and just like when I talked to Callie, that's exactly what it was. The families just got reimagined. And you still consider your ex part of your family. It's
Oh,
just a different
a
relationship.
critically important part of the family. I mean, and after the divorce, we went to Disney World with our kids. It was something we had been there when they were really young, and then when they were still in grade school. Maybe the oldest was maybe Callie was in middle school. But we wanted to do that again as a reimagined family, to have those memories, those beautiful memories, and to revisit. And the same with enjoying holidays together, or just helping out, like taking care of the dog, or a lift to the mechanic's place, or whatever it is. Um I think the thing that's most troubling about this is the opposite of the amicable divorce, is that usually person puts themselves in a position where they sort of blame the other person for everything that went wrong. There's very little self-awareness that goes with that type of approach, because it takes two. And maybe it's very clear to you or a lot of other people that the other person did more bad stuff than you did. But when you are critical of that ex spouse, and you either put them down, or you refuse to excuse mistakes, or you blame them, the message that children receive is that they're bad. Because they came from that parent. They are 50% that other parent. You married them. You decided to make them a parent, together with you. And so when you criticize that other parent, put them down, shut them out, you are, in a sense, criticizing that other child. And what example are you setting for future relationships? Because your kids may one day find themselves in difficult spots in a relationship, or perhaps even divorce themselves. I hope none of my kids are divorced, but I hope that if they're in a relationship that's not working, that they will follow their heart, and that they will have some good role models to help them lead the way, if that's a choice that they or their spouse or both make, in their own lives.
I just think that that's such an important message. And I know that with Callie, she says, I hope I get married and, have a healthy relationship and we live happily ever after. She's like, but you know what? I'm not afraid of divorce. Like, she's like, I'm
Mm.
not going to, like, I don't have a fear about it. I don't worry about it. I don't, and I take that to heart because, I think that when my daughter, talks about divorce, My parents were divorced, my ex's parents were divorced. She, her thoughts are about, I'm doomed for divorce, or
Yeah.
I and, I do a lot around cognitive restructuring, and we talk a lot about how your life circumstances aren't what create your feelings, it's your thoughts about them. And this thought that, like, I am doomed, which is not a fact, right? It's just because she's looking at the circumstance and she's thinking about it in a way that's giving her a sense of helplessness or whatever. And I continue to try to get her to reframe that. And it's like, listen, 50% of Americans get divorced,
Yeah.
and if and it's just a statistic. And just because your parents were divorced, and our parents were divorced, but they're just part of the 50%. And we are all living longer, and
Yeah.
so we have multiple chapters. Like our parents, like they didn't have as many chapters as we did. They didn't have to, they got married earlier probably, but yet like they died younger. So they didn't have as many life transitions to go through together. And with every life transition, you have choices.
For
And
sure.
and I just think it's so amazing how you and your ex have really displayed so much just humility and love. And I always talk about the fact that, it feels so much better to love than it does to hate. And if you want to get divorced and you want to hold on to hate, guess what? That's going to make your life not feel great. Hi, everyone. It's Tanya here. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Better Than Bitter podcast. I really appreciate everybody supporting our mission to help change the divorce dialogue. So if you are interested in subscribing, that would be great. The more people that subscribe, the better we will be able to produce content that's meaningful to you. And in appreciation for people who subscribe, we have lots of different special offers at Better Than Bitter. One of them is that you get an opportunity to participate in a free group support trial. We have a support group membership plus, which means that you not only get weekly support groups, but in addition to that, you get access to a resource library of articles, webinars, workshops, and so much more. By subscribing, we want to give you the benefit of jumping into one of our support groups and trying it out. One of the other benefits is that you can participate in a one-to-one free consultation with me. So if you are going through divorce, if you're at the beginning stages, maybe you're in the thick of it, or maybe you're post-divorce and just wondering how to get back into life, start dating, building healthier relationships, all of those are things that we can talk about in our one-to-one consultation. So again, go ahead, subscribe to our channel and participate in one of our free offers. And I look forward to engaging with each and every one of you so you can be better than bitter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. You're not only, you're definitely hurting yourself, you're also hurting your kids. And
Yeah.
I would argue that certain things that make a good relationship become even more important in a divorce. As an example, communication. So when you're in a healthy, happy relationship, communication is important. I think in a divorce, communication becomes even more important. So, hey, here's when I'm going to pick up the kids. Hey, I have to be out of town for work. Is there any way you can help me out? I mean, but it goes way beyond to, struggles that your kids are having at school, perhaps academically. It might be mental health issues. You mentioned um, my passion for helping people work with emotional and mental health. Um, I often would talk through with my ex-husband, hey, one of our kids is really struggling. I'm worried about this. What are your thoughts about it? Can we talk to them together? Those kinds of things. Flexibility. So many of your tips, your holiday guide, it was awesome, by the way, are about
Oh, good.
flexibility. Yeah, be more flexible. You have to be more flexible in a divorce than when you're living in the same household. All of these things become critical to really making it work. And this isn't to fool anybody to say that oh, I don't have some thoughts about my ex-husband, and I know he does about me, like, oh, that really made me mad, or I really wish he hadn't done that, or whatever it is. It's not that it's like you said, unicorns and butterflies and spark
Yeah.
glitter, but it's being able to set that aside. And you know what? If you have an issue with that ex-spouse, I would say talk to someone else. Talk to your mom if you trust her. Talk to your best friend. Talk to a coworker who's been through the same thing. You don't need to address those grievances with your children. That's where people run into problems.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I actually have been teaching this webinar. It's called Six Communication Techniques on How to Get What You Want in Divorce. And it was actually modeled after the Gottman's relationship repair checklist, which is the Gottmans are the people who really help people in marriage. But when I read through that, I was like, oh my gosh, like this needs to be redone, but for divorce, because you are right. Communication is so important in divorce and so much more important almost than in marriage when it comes to the kids, because there are two different worlds that these kids are experiencing, and making sure that you are one team. And I know that I had a parenting coach on a couple of episodes again, and she talked about really taking a look at the partnership before you got divorced and your co-parenting relationship, and making sure that you completely push that old partnership away to be able to formulate a new co-parenting partnership that is absent of all of the things that came with the old relationship. And it's just so important that it is a new partnership that needs to be established. And you know what? Now that each of you are having to do each other's jobs, and that's what I talk about a lot, like, yeah, when you're married, like one person does the activities and one person's doing the bills and one person's, maybe doing the doctor's appointments. Well, a lot of times in divorce, like you're dividing and conquering and you're taking on all these new roles that you never had to do, and yet one person might not be as good as the other. I know my ex wasn't as good at cooking or going food shopping, and for a while the kids were complaining about it, but I was supporting him and making sure that the kids just gave him some space and encouraged him, recipes, like, do what they can to support him instead of bashing him and being like, oh, I'll make you something and keep it in the fridge. I mean, sometimes I do that because we still nest, and so I do like make a little extra food, so if there's something the kids really want, it's in the fridge. But in general, it's about coming together as a new partnership and learning how to communicate, be flexible, be supportive. I hear all these war stories where like, oh, well, it's his night, like he's just going to need to go do it, or um,
Yes.
and it's like, what good is that doing? The only person you're hurting is your kids. Or, oh, when dad was supposed to pick you up and now he's asking me to take you to his house. Like, those kind of like snide comments, like, who are you hurting? You are only hurting your children, you
Yeah.
know, you know,
Yes. Well, I think about, you mentioned cooperation. I thought about when my ex-husband had hip surgery, I picked him up from the hospital with my youngest daughter, Maddie. And after dropping him off, we went and got his prescriptions filled. I think we got maybe a few snacks, and then we visited him again, made sure he was, feeling okay. And when we got back in the car, she said to me, thank you so much for being so nice to my dad. And
right,
y- parents can have no idea how much it means to their children when you are nice to their other parent. That person, regardless of mistakes, and we've all made them, that person deserves respect, and that person deserves appreciation, and that person deserves to be treated with kindness, just like the people that you pass on the street. And my ex husband has a serious girlfriend, and she gives, as an example, lovely gifts to my kids, very thoughtful. Like, I would never think of some of the things that she's given them, or cards they've said that are very nice, and I'll say, that is so, that is such a thoughtful gift. Or, she invited them, and I think they made crepes or they did something recently, and they're a lot older. I'm like, that's so cool that she would cook with you guys and spend that time with you. And you can always find good and nice things to say to them. And then how is that, how them and are we modeling behavior and doing the right thing? Because I'm not proud that I'm divorced, but I am proud of the many of the ways that I handled it, especially as my kids were involved. And so you don't have to be proud that it happened. You don't even have to be happy. Maybe it wasn't your choice, like you say on your website, but how you react to it and how you choose to move forward is up to you. And I want to set a good example of kindness and love, not just to my kids who I adore, but also to the person who I chose to make their father.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I know we're kind of running out of time, and I asked the same question to all of my guests who have been married. And I don't mean to catch you off guard because I don't believe I actually told you this was coming. But I wrote a blog about the 20-year marriage contract with the option to renew. And there was some thinking behind it because I got divorced at 20 years. And I was thinking about how hard it is to get divorced and how hard the legal system has been to allow for you to get divorced. And there's all of these potential things that could end up in a legal battle. And so I thought about, well, what if, I know we have prenuptial agreements, but they're usually for people who have a lot of money, or things that they want to keep separate. But what if it was more general for everyone getting married? It's so easy to get married and it's so hard to get divorced. So what if we had some forethought about, a 15, a 20-year contract? It doesn't mean you get divorced. It just means that you have preemptively thought about, if we have kids and one person stays at home and the other person works, that we in writing say, like, we have together when we are feeling good about each other, set in stone what would happen based on that decision. Like, how will we divide our assets if we ended up getting divorced? And thinking more thoroughly about our children and about what our focus is when you're coming in that amazing place of love, right? Because not everyone is like you and I who could actually continue to love, after divorce or through the divorce process. And that if they were in a place of love before, when they're doing their 20-year marriage contract, and then there's an option to renew. And that is where I ask my guests, because would you have worked harder, differently, thinking about the fact, ooh, like, we're coming to that contract, and what can I be doing differently? How can I be a better partner? How can I show kindness, thoughtfulness? Because I want to work hard to keep this together versus it just already going down that path of no return. And then you end up, you know, ending things. So, what are your thoughts about a 15-year or a 20-year marriage contract with the option to renew? And how would that have maybe shifted, your life, your thinking, the way you invested in your relationship, etc.?
Gosh, that's a good question. I guess what I would say is, and I don't know if you're talking so much about the length of the marriage or the term. I think you're asking what would you have done then in the relationship if you saw it more as not just a lifetime for as long as you live, but as something that you would have the option to renew. What would you do differently? Am I understanding your question right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is there this thought about, yeah, like, first of all, if we had to put things on paper when we were madly in love right at the beginning, we thought about the trajectory of our marriage, like, what would we have potentially wanted to put into that contract? And as we're moving through the contract, that thinking of, like, oh God, I have to really work hard at this because I can't just assume that it's going to be here tomorrow, because it could be coming to an end because there's going to be an option to renew or not renew.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things I would do differently. I have a lot of faults, but one of the things that I think I do well is I'm aware, I'm reflective, and I like to make changes as a result of those reflections, not just sort of accept, oh, I am the way I am, and I'm just gonna, because I think it's never too late. That's the one thing I would say to anybody who's listening to you and to me is that if you haven't been dedicated to making kindness and peace and doing what's right for the sake of your kids, it's never too late, no matter how long that you've been divorced or even if you're just starting the process. But, I think I remember it was either a child specialist or a divorce, and we did go through mediation, who asked us separately, well, why did you marry Keith? Yeah, which I thought was interesting. They don't ask, why did you get divorced? Why did you marry him? I said, well, for one, I thought he'd be a great father. And she said, were you right? And I said, absolutely. So I don't regret that he is the father of my kids, because I think he's the reason they're so empathetic and compassionate and smart and creative and a lot of things, that are really extremely cool about him. But I do think if we entered into relationships knowing there was an option to renew, I think people would behave differently in their relationship, because it's just like if you're playing in a sport, you gotta come to that play every time. You got to bring your best game, no matter what sport it is. And I think sometimes that's where we get lax in relationships. We're not bringing our best game. We're not always thinking about the other person or about the future. And if are we going to renew this, are they going to want to renew this contract with me? And maybe if we thought more about that, regardless of the term of that relationship, maybe we could avoid a lot more divorces.
Yeah, again, there is no right answer, but I love everybody that I have spoken to. They all come with a little different flavor and perspective. And it's just something that I just find fascinating because, again, divorce has become so hard to do and it is so costly. And people don't get divorced because of the cost, or they don't get divorced because of what it could do to the kids. And a lot of people are just very unhappy, and, one, if we, worked harder at our relationships, knowing that we had a renewal coming up, we had to be recruited for the team again.
Right.
you
Yes.
know you don't just automatically get a place on the team. Like, you got to be recruited again. And so you got to bring your A game. And yeah, what would that look like? And I really appreciate your perspective on that, because that was different, like I said, than everybody else's. So it's been great. And Molly, I could talk to you forever. And I
Same.
really
Ditto.
just appreciate you being on the podcast today. And I always kind of end our podcast with the three tips, like the three things that I have pulled from each of the different interviews. The first thing I would say for the top tips that came from you today is that the one that survives is the one that you feed. So if you are feeding that black wolf, I would say think again, because if you continue to feed that negativity into yourself, into your kids, that wolf will grow. So think about how you can feed that white wolf with positivity, with gratitude, focus on what's good and not what's bad, and make sure you're communicating those goods to your kids. The second thing is really just about the fact that not everything is going to be butterflies and rainbows or unicorns. And that even though the perception of the children, which is what you hope, they believe that really that everything that you did was positive and great. And that's what they should believe, because keep the rest of the stuff behind closed doors. Stay on the same page. Learn how to communicate. That second tip that you gave about how important communication is in divorce, that is just such an incredible tip for everybody to learn. And the third thing is just that, you have choices. You have this choice right now in front of you. If you are just starting your divorce process, or if you're in the middle of the divorce, you have a choice as to how you are going to show up in this new chapter. And you have a choice to decide that love and kindness is going to be what wins versus the revenge and the bitterness and the negativity. So choose to feel better, choose love, because it's overall going to make you feel better and it's going to really affect your kids in the long run. So those are my 3 top tips from Molly today. Uh,
I love that. If I could just say one really quick thing, because I love the way
Absolutely.
you summarized what I said and put them into tips. I would say if you don't know how your kids view the situation, don't be afraid to check in with them, almost regardless of age, and say to them, "Hey, do I make you feel good about your dad? Do I make you feel good about seeing your mom?" Um, and how do you think we're doing at getting along and making life easier and lending to your happiness? If if you're afraid to ask that question, that's a problem. And if you encourage your kids to be honest, you could really learn and course correct if you're not leading them down a positive path because they deserve that.
Oh my gosh, Molly, that was the top of the top tip of the day. That was amazing. You are right. And you know what? That reminds me, I'm going to go check in with my kids. I try to do that frequently, but just
Good for you.
the way that you said that was just exactly what people need to have the courage to do that, because you don't know how your kids are going to respond. So it's okay to not know and still go and move yourself forward to ask that tough question, because you need to be prepared in case they say like, oh no, you know what, mom, you're not doing a good job. And you have to be prepared for that, but know that you're ready to course correct and let them know that like, hey, listen, I'm going to do, thank you for the feedback, right? Because I definitely want to do better. And it's
Absolutely.
okay to be vulnerable there. And I talk about vulnerability a lot in my communication techniques, and that it's okay to be vulnerable, even in a time of pain or a time of transition. It's okay to, either talk to your soon to be ex about how you're feeling, and, needing to press pause buttons, or talking to your kids. You don't, it's okay for them to also know that, hey, I'm still struggling too. You're not alone.
Yeah,
That's
and reach out to people, associate with people like you, Tanya. So if I'm looking for a friend and I'm going through a divorce, or maybe it's friends I already have, don't hang out with the people who are negative and into bashing their ex-spouse. Who wants that? That's not fun. That's not uplifting. Hang out with people like you. And if you can't find one, ask your friends, "Hey, do you know anybody who had an amicable divorce? Because I want to hang out with that person and be uplifted to be a bright light."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why I host support groups. So as part of our membership, we have this, weekly support group, because I want those people to connect with those people. Because you know what? There's not that many out there in your friend group that could say that they're, came from such amicable divorces. So sometimes people have a hard time finding those people. And that's why we create a support group, so people can find people like them who want this, who believe that it can happen, and just need the courage and the connection with others to support them, in being able to make this happen.
Yeah.
All right, Molly. Well, it was so great to connect, and hopefully, we will connect again soon. I'm sure I'll have lots of other podcast ideas for you after this.
I love it. And I mean this most sincerely. Keep up the good work. You're in the
Thank you.
good fight. You're feeding your white wolf with the work that you're doing. So I appreciate you.
Oh, that means the world to me. Thank you so much, really. All right. Take care.
Nice to talk to you.